Their flags mean death, or pillage, kidnapping, and ransom. Their ships are blood red, covered in poisonous oil. They eat rats and caterpillars. Their women will disembowel you with a butcher's hook and a smile. They are the pirates of the 6 squadrons. At the turn of the 19th century, they rule the South China Sea. Hundreds of ships, 60,000 men. At their peak, their fleet is larger than the Spanish Armada. Their racketeering business is more powerful than Capone's mob. They run the coast, under the leadership of a woman, Zheng Yi Sao. Within the span of 10 years, Zheng Yi Sao leaves the floating brothel she used to work at. She marries a prominent pirate captain. She unifies pirate gangs under a single command, develops a massive and extremely profitable business network, marries her own son, runs the biggest fleet since the Ottoman Empire, and negotiates the peaceful surrender of her whole fleet with money and jobs and land attached for every man to the last, within the span of 10 years. Then, she fades back into the background, and we never hear from her again. But you can't tell the story of Zheng Yi Sao without telling the story of the mighty 6 squadrons she ruled. And to be blunt, you can't really tell the story of Zheng Yi Sao, period. There is no information on who she was until she married a pirate, close to no information about her after she stopped being a pirate, and in between, contemporary sources are extremely rare. They don't have much detail, they're poorly translated. Of course, the pirates themselves had neither the time nor the inclination to log their dastardly deeds, and not a lot of their victims lived to tell the tale. If you've heard the story of Zheng Yi Sao before, I'm willing to bet that a good 50% of it came from Western writers who never set foot east of Athens. They padded the narrative with made-up anecdotes and dialogue. They inserted descriptions clashing with what we know of 19th century China. They twisted the facts to fit their agenda. Let's not do that, shall we? This episode goes back to the source, to writings of the time penned by Chinese commentators and Western captives, and to historians like Professor Deanne Murray, who know that facts are strong enough to punch fiction in the nose, commandeer its boat, and seize the jewelry. I'm your host, Tor Parsons. These are my co-hosts, Jollibee the Durian, Thimble the Doll, and Sluz the Shoggoth. And welcome to Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities. So you've thought about how you'd rebuild civilization after the apocalypse, right? Of course you have. You watched Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities. But have you ever acted on those thoughts? Have you written a book with achingly beautiful hand-painted illustrations of everything you'd need to rebuild a modern society from scratch? Because the geniuses at Hungry Minds did. Introducing the book. It's so gorgeous. I procrastinated on writing this ad script for hours because I was reading it. Opening it to a random page, here's how to tan leather. How to build a microscope. Here's how to build stoves, waffle irons, and a meat grinder. But your post-apocalyptic civilization can't be all work or no play, so here's how to make music. Here's all the games you can play with dice and cards. Snap up that QR code, put in the promo code TORSCABINET10, and get 10% off on the book. You never know when it'll come in handy, and even if civilization muddles through, those drawings are just so gorgeous. One of the most interesting original works of art I've seen in the last few years, and it can be yours too. Surprisingly, this Chinese story starts in Vietnam, a country torn by centuries of revolts and bids for power. A new civil war starts in 1789. 3 brothers from the powerful Nguyen family, the common Vietnamese name, pretty sure it's like Nguyen, Nguyen, something along those lines. Vietnamese people, please correct me in the comments. Anyway, 3 brothers from that family snatch a temporary victory. They fly the banner of the Taishan Rebellion, the rebellion of the mountains of the west from where the brothers hail. They manage to unify the kingdom. But their opponents in the south don't recognize them as legitimate heirs to the throne. Decades of incessant fighting deplete the Taishan armies. The brothers need help. In a last-ditch effort, they enlist the service of the pirates, working the Sino-Vietnamese border, making them privateers, pirates sanctioned and financed by a government. The year is 1792. State-funded piracy looks like a promising employment opportunity. Pirates congregate in gangs of several hundred people and several dozen junks. Oh right, yeah, this is going to sound weird throughout this episode, so let's make ourselves clear. This is a junk. It's a sailboat. It's been looking like that with its triangular sails since the 12th century. Contrary to Western sailing ships, which have all these specific categories like a brig and a schooner based on how many masts and sails they have and where on the boat they are, a junk is not a particular shape or size. It's just a Chinese sailboat. It can have 1 mast, 3 masts, 9 masts, and under one shape or another, it's been the transport of choice on Chinese rivers and seas since at least the 3rd century, which is when pirates started roaming the waters off China. You could argue that a junk is the best sailboat ever designed. The sails open and close within seconds like a Chinese fan, meaning that you only need a skeleton crew to maneuver the ship. You steer through a rudder positioned at the stern, providing balance and stability, something Westerners would only discover a solid 1,000 years after the Chinese. The curved hull with a flat bottom performs equally well on shallow rivers and out at sea, and the interior is modeled on the inside of a bamboo stem. Tiny watertight compartments connect via a maze of hatches and ladders. Junks are not quite unsinkable, not a lot of ships are, but to fully sink one, you'd need to pulverize its hull. A junk is an incredible feat of engineering. For what it needs to do, it works extremely well. What does it need to do? That's the beauty of it. Pretty much everything and anything you can do on land. Junks can be cargo ships, merchant ships, going all the way to Korea and Japan, warships, hauling up to 50 cannons. They can be houseboats where families live. China at the time hosted a whole civilization of boat dwellers, the Shuishangren, an ethnic minority whose name literally means people on the water. Were not allowed to live on land or to marry into land-based families. A handful still exist in the Hong Kong area. We'll hear from them again soon. Junks can also become floating casinos, floating pop-up shops, floating opium dens, and quote-unquote flower boats, the name given to floating brothels. If your business doesn't want to attract attention from the authorities, reprobation from the ruling classes, or affection from the tax man, you run it from a junk. Along the Pearl River Delta and the South China Sea, the junks are bright red, the teak wood coated with poisonous tung oil for waterproofing. Supported by Vietnam, the pirates form associations, but so far, they've been unable to organize beyond a few hundred men per fleet. Why? Because Chinese pirates are not one uniform group of people. You have subgroups like the Hakka, descending from the Han, China's major ethnic group. You have non-Han subgroups, like the Shuishangren, plus people from Japan, South Asian countries, even Africa on occasion. Each group has their own language, their customs, their culture. Hakka women, for example, don't bind their feet. And because humans will human, every group harbors prejudice against the others. The pirates of the South China Sea form what political scientist and CIA operative James C. Scott called an escape society. That's a group of people fleeing taxes, conscription, forced labor, all forms of state violence. These people didn't sign a social contract. They were burdened with state sovereignty from birth. The empire once united longs to divide. The empire once divided longs to unite. Through these cycles of making and unmaking a nation, the state alternately acquires and expels populations out on the frontier end of the empire. This propels people into a nomadic lifestyle. They evade the state and find refuge in places hard to reach, like the highlands and the seas. To survive, these people get together. They form small egalitarian groups, escape societies. Power is horizontal, wealth is redistributed, and tension with state authorities is constant. Escape societies don't have to be criminal, they're just at the fringe. Think Braveheart, or the Berber populations in the Atlas Mountains of North Africa. One of my favorite counterintuitive things to say that I stand by is that I'm not an anarchist because I'm not conformist enough. I like that truly leaderless societies can exist, but I wouldn't want to live in one because it would be too much of a panopticon. As we saw with the Akali Raft, and we see again and again in escape societies across history, a small group of people can form a happy, successful community that is truly communist in the sense of from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. That's sort of the natural mode of human organization. But it's stifling because where there are no cops, everyone is a cop. There's not a lot of room to be weird. But not all escape societies are created equal. Often they're forced into organized crime, which creates a vicious cycle of conflict with the settled authorities. They include nomads in settled countries like the Romani, barbarians on the steppes who sometimes decide it's time to do some real pillaging, and, in our case, the pirates of the South China Sea. But why? The southern provinces of China aren't economic deserts, far from it. The land is fertile, the sea is full of fish, the weather could be worse. There are big cities and medium-sized cities and rich rural land where businesses flourish. Why can't these people get an honest job? Well, say you're a fisherman along the Guangdong coast at the dawn of the 19th century. You have a family to feed, you honor your ancestors and pray to your gods, but all roads to making enough money to support your family are blocked. To become a proper shopkeeper, for instance, you'd have to be accepted into the powerful Merchants Guild. Forget about it. You're too low class or the wrong ethnicity. Too bad, since the guild system covers all of what we would call the private sector. And for the public sector, it's worse. All civil servants' jobs, including the army, are handed out according to your results at the daunting imperial examination. If you've seen some of my previous Chinese history episodes, you'll be familiar with the imperial examination. This was a nationwide test that endured in roughly the same form for thousands of years. It measured your knowledge of the Confucian classics, your handwriting and vocabulary, and your literary style. You had to write a so-called 8-legged essay about how you'd respond to a contemporary governing challenge with ancient Confucian wisdom, and it had to be formulaic. The more formulaic, the better. The exam established a unified culture throughout a humongous and diverse empire, but it was highly selective. Even if you prepared like your life depended on it, which it did, the success rate was 1%. And that's among the more educated. Hong Xiuquan had his vision from Jesus that made him start the Taiping Rebellion after he failed his third attempt at the imperial exam. At some eras in Chinese history, anyone could take the exam, and the barrier to doing well was finding the time to do all the months of studying necessary. But at this point, fishermen, peasants, and women of all classes were forbidden by law from taking the exam. So you, the 19th century fisherman, are stuck. Because of the latest famine, taxes have gone up. You have a new baby coming. You had to pay for a relative's funeral. You borrow money, which you can't pay back, unless you borrow more money. Now you're locked in maddening cycles of impoverishment and increasing debt. What do? You realize that you own a boat, and there's a neighboring cove where you can hide it. Once the fishing season has ended, you try your luck. You hijack a small merchant junk, transporting wine or incense perhaps. It works. It makes total sense. Soon you're gonna need a bigger boat. You join a group of pirates for share of a larger booty. Piracy is the promise of a better life. For 10 years under Vietnamese sponsorship, pirates of the South China Sea are independent, disorganized gangs. This changes one fine day in 1801 when a prominent pirate captain named Zheng Yi marries a prostitute from one of the flower boats on the coast. The bride's maiden name is Shuyang. Probably. She's known by a few other names. We're gonna go with this one. Shuyang may have been a Shuishangren, the outcast ethnic group living on boats. On her wedding day, she's 26. That's very late for a Chinese woman of her time to marry. Perhaps her ethnicity prohibited her from marrying a land dweller, but I have a hunch that she was picky and waited for the right dude to come along. Anyway, that's all we know about Shuyang before she gets married. Is she super pretty, or particularly ugly, very tall, very small? Probably none of these, or contemporary writers would have waxed lyrical about it. All we can tell from her future actions is that she's smart, she's fearless, and she doesn't give a flying junk about what others think of her. Atta girl. It only takes a few months for the newlyweds to become the epitome of a power couple. In July of 1802, the Vietnamese Taishan rulers are defeated. Pirates find themselves without a sponsor. This could spell the end for them, but the Zhengs meet the crisis head-on. Together, they unify a scattered bunch into a formidable confederation of 6 squadrons. They will fly the red, black, white, green, blue, and yellow flags. No Qing flag here, although there was a 7th squadron for a short time. Commanding the Red Fleet, the largest and most powerful of the 6 squadrons, Captain Zheng is the father figure. His wife Shuyang is the organizer. Within a year and a half, the Confederation numbers 400 junks and 70,000 men. We're not even counting the women, of which there are plenty. Pirates live on board with their whole families. Wives and children are there. The higher up on the ship's totem pole you rank, the more wives you could have. 1 for a sailor, up to 3 for an average captain. On a day-to-day basis, the women on board are seamstresses and laundresses. They assist in the loading of the cargo. They take care of the children. But when the ship is under attack, all bets are off. They fight to the death. And not with rolling pins either. They use sabers, bludgeons, and hooks. In a pinch, they can steer the ship. A few years into the Confederation, we know for sure that there are at least a few women captaining pirate junks. United, the pirates become outrageously successful. The area is a trading hub for all manner of goods traveling along the coast, whether they're stopping at Guangzhou, the major port westerners called Canton, or continuing to Korea and Japan. Chinese junks, Portuguese ships, and British vessels of the mighty East India Company crisscross the waters around the Pearl River Delta. They get pillaged and plundered. Officers and their families are taken hostage for ransom. In 1805, the heads of the 6 squadrons sign an agreement. It's a strikingly legalistic document, closer to a constitution than to a restaurant napkin. It determines which pirate junks can plunder which vessels. It imposes fines for disobedience. The escape society is turning into a parallel state. And then one day, on the 7th day of the 10th moon, in the 20th year of the Trois Lords, which puts us infidel dogs on November 16th, 1807, Captain Zheng Yi, commander of the Red Fleet, perishes in a storm off the coast of Vietnam. The expected thing for his wife to do would have been to retire to a chaste widowhood, but Shuyang doesn't care for the expected thing, and she realizes that the loss of their historical leader and patriarch could mean the end of the Confederation. Her time has come. So, she does the unthinkable. She takes a lover, and not just any lover either. Pao is her own son. It's a Woody Allen situation. Now that I have your attention, let me backtrack here a bit. Back to the days where the late Zheng Yi was leading the Red Fleet. One day, as they're roaming the coast, ravaging and plundering, they capture a fisherman and his 15-year-old son named Pao. Captain Zheng Yi takes a liking to the vivacious and bright teenager. Pao becomes, in all but paperwork, the pirate couple's adopted son. No information has reached us as to the fate of the boy's actual father, but I wouldn't keep my hopes up. Captain Zheng Yi initiates Pao into piracy through one of the accepted rites, a homosexual liaison. That was pretty common and not frowned upon among some of the ethnic groups of South China, despite the kid's age. Then, Pao learns the ropes, how to run a ship, how to keep the books. He soon takes command of his own junk. Again, we're talking about boats. When his adoptive father dies, Pao is too young to stand a chance in the struggle for power between squadron commanders, but his adoptive mother knows 2 things. 1, to keep the Confederation united, they need a new admiral for the Red Fleet, the biggest and most powerful of the squadrons, and 2, that admiral can't be herself. She would, as a single woman, be under constant attack from pretenders to the throne. She needs a man, somebody both legitimate in the eye of the Confederation and blindly loyal to her. Pao, her adopted son, is the only man to fit the bill. He owes his entire status to the Zheng family. He is 21, personable, and skilled. Shuyang moves extremely fast to quell potential opposition before it even erupts. She argues that there's only one way to sustain the incredible power and wealth they gained through the United Confederation. That's continuity of power. And who best to embody that but their old master and commander's own son? At the close of a lightning-fast campaign, Shuyang installs Pao at the head of the mighty Red Fleet. He directly commands over 300 junks and anywhere from 20 to 40,000 men. He has authority over the other squadron captains, and he reports to her. That's just an incredible feat of diplomacy. I mean, picture yourself as this 32-year-old woman. You have no education, you've never served in the military, there is one line on your resume and it says prostitute. You're so common that your actual name is not known for certain. Your husband just died, the guys who want your job are bloodthirsty rogues. You know they could slit your throat at a whim, yet you rope them in, one by one. Never mind that in order to do that, Shuyang has to break 2 very strong taboos, the chaste widowhood and, obviously, incest. Even though Pao is not related to her by blood, the pirates wince, but that's the thing about organized crime. You can't really hit your leader with a, hey, that's illegal. They yield to the better leader. In a gesture that consolidates her legitimacy as queen bee and depositary of her late husband's legacy, Shuyang takes a war name, Zheng Yi Sao, meaning Captain Zheng Yi's wife. As for Pao, he would come to prominence in Chinese lore as Zheng Sao Tsai, Zheng Pao the Kid. If you're like Claire, who co-wrote this episode, and you watch anything that's got people in silk robes flying through the air with a cutlass between their teeth, you've seen at least one film featuring Zheng Pao. As commander of the Red Fleet, he's the visible head of the Confederation, but his wife, and mother, devises the internal policies, the business planning, and the long-term vision. Likelier than not, she's the main architect of the pirates' code of conduct, the only law these outlaws recognize. It's simple enough that no matter where you come from, you can understand it and remember it. The code outlines 3 main points. Number 1, desertion. Any man who goes on shore without permission will be paraded around the whole fleet. Then his ears will be perforated repeatedly until he dies. 2. Theft. Every single object of any value resulting from the plundering will be recorded by the boat's purser. Each man taking part in the pillage will receive 20% of the loot. The rest will be added to the general fund. Taking anything from the general fund without permission will result in the death penalty. And 3. Sexual assault. A man wanting to have intercourse with a captive must ask the ship's purser for permission. Not the captive herself. You don't have to ask her. They're pirates. They don't stand on ceremony. No, you have to ask the purser. After which, he will bring the woman aside the ship's hold. Using unsanctioned violence against a woman or marrying her without her permission is punishable by death. The last point seems to allow for a little bit of leeway. Prisoners' accounts tell of captive women, presumably those with no ransom value, being sold to men on board for $40. But they were sold as wives. The men had to marry them and remain religiously faithful. Penalties range from being put in irons to flogged to quartered. That's penalties for the men, though, if they cheated on the wives they just bought. It wasn't rare for women in that situation to jump overboard, choosing death over this less than enviable fate. Zheng Yi Sao has the final say on who to reward and who to punish. Richard Glasspool, a British captive, remarks that trespassers are punished with an efficiency that seems almost incredible. Rewards are handed out after each mission once the purser has logged in the booty. That's how you rule over 60 to 70,000 lawless ruffians. They are ruffians, but not without morals, so the other control tool devised by the couple takes advantage of the rare common point uniting them all: religion. Chinese religion, a bit like Hinduism, is a big mess of gods and holy texts and philosophical traditions that together don't really form one coherent whole, but they form enough of a continuum that there isn't much sectarianism. You'll pray to your local god, I'll pray to mine, and together we're practicing more or less the same religion. On one of their bigger junks, the pirates build a pagoda, a floating temple. It sails alongside the main fleet. Before each pillage, the pirates need to honor their gods and hear the omens. If the omen is bad, they won't follow through with the attack. So, the fleet leaders assemble at the pagoda, burn incense, and ask for signs. What the men don't know is that ahead of the ceremony, Pow has met with the priests and explained his next move. The priests would rather keep their heads at the business end of their necks, so, miraculously, the gods always seem to favor the pirates' endeavors. This harmless manipulation adds a further layer of stability to the Confederation. It also builds up the belief that Pow is of divine essence. The governors of the Guangdong province must have briefly rejoiced upon learning of Captain Zheng Yi's death. They must have hoped the Confederation would implode. Instead, it just got far, far more powerful. Zheng Yi Sao realizes that maintaining such large fleets requires funds, bigger funds than they can obtain through sporadic attacks. They need regular sources of income. Not content with being a diplomatic powerhouse, Zheng Yi Sao proves a business mastermind of the mob boss persuasion. At the time, the province of Guangdong numbers 22 salterns. A saltern is an installation that produces salt, either through natural evaporation or by boiling seawater in metal pans. Salterns are basically money-making machines. To get a notion of how absolutely key salt was in the world economy, check out Mark Kurlansky's mind-blowing book Salt. In China, archaeological traces of salterns in Chongqing date back to 2000 BCE. To this day, you can be worth your salt at something, which is a reference to how soldiers in pre-modern armies the world over were often paid in salt, which is also where we get the word salary. 4 times a year, large fleets of salt-carrying ships sail from the port of Dianbai on a 400-mile voyage to Guangzhou. The pirates mount a series of coordinated attacks. They capture fleet after fleet until 4 of the 270 salt junks remain outside their control. Only 4. They force the others to continue to haul salt under their own terms. Salt merchants find it more efficient to deal directly with the pirates. They pay large sums of money to guarantee safe passage. The practice develops to the point that there's now a standard rate for safe passage certificates, 50 Spanish silver dollars per 44 pounds of cargo. It adds up considering those ships could carry several hundred pounds of salt each. Also, yes, we're counting in dollars, but not the dollars you know. At the dawn of the 16th century, the Spanish silver dollar became the first international currency. The importance of the Spanish dollar really can't be overstated. It was legal tender even in the US all the way up to 1857, because in the first age of colonialism, when the Spanish and Portuguese empires were so dominant they literally had a treaty that divided the world into Spanish and Portuguese halves, what else would you use? You could find someone who'd accept Spanish dollars anywhere. Check out the symbol on the back. These are the Pillars of Hercules, a symbolic representation of the Straits of Gibraltar and a Spanish national symbol. That symbol is believed to be where the dollar sign came from. The British called the Spanish dollar pieces of 8, because to make change, you would literally cut a coin into 8 pieces. When Long John Silver's parrot yaps about like he's really clamoring for big bucks. In fact, the New York Stock Exchange traded securities in eighths of a dollar until 1997 as a vestige of the time when the Spanish dollar was still the standard for global trade. Pieces of 8 keep cascading into the pirate's treasure chest. Now that her system is in place, Zheng Yi Sao extends it to the merchants' junks and the fishing boats. Safe passage certificates go for 50 to 500 Spanish dollars per trip. The operation is so massive that Zheng Yi Sao establishes a network of offices along the coast to collect the fees. The heart of the system is in Macau. Why Macau? And not the larger port of Guangzhou? Macau was leased to the Portuguese, therefore less directly under Chinese scrutiny. It's a great place to collect weapons and ammunition for the Confederation, but the utterly brilliant bit is this. China wants to limit their commerce with the outside world, so all foreign ships must, by Chinese law, stop in Macau before proceeding to Guangzhou. Now, they all have to pay the pirates. Wait a minute, this didn't happen in one day. What are the authorities doing exactly? How can the Chinese armed forces let this happen? They were a pretty advanced country, right? Well, early on they tried their best. They impound a few ships, send a few pirates to jail, cut a few heads, but it's useless. Piracy is more attractive than ever. Fishermen, peasants, and bandits keep joining the Confederation, and China hasn't been much of a seafaring nation in centuries. Naval combat does not often turn out well for the Navy. They're outnumbered, and they're facing an enemy who would rather die in combat than at the hands of the executioner. Soon, the admirals spend most of their time ashore, waiting, they claim, for better winds. Patrol squadrons can't see why they should be braver, or more dead, than their commanding officers. At sea, when pirate junks approach military vessels, soldiers fire their guns aimlessly as a warning, and the pirates make the appropriate detour. The situation deteriorates to the point where military personnel, terrified of going to sea, sabotage their own vessels. The Navy now reduced to a farce, the coast is clear, literally. The pirates direct their attacks on land. Some of their favorite targets are army garrisons, chock full of weapons, ammunition, and food. You would think that they're crazy to take the military head on, but their tactic is unbeatable. Here's how it goes. 300 pirates sweep into a harbor. The bigger ships start cannoning the garrisons. This provides cover for smaller junks to move in. Once on land, the pirates are superior to soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. Probably more determined too. Tonight, they'll eat well. That's how the pirates acquire their new headquarters. The Guangdong waters are bordered by a string of islands. Naozhou is arguably China's largest volcanic island. It's not that big, though, about 6 miles long. On Naozhou, the Imperial Navy builds a fortress to house anti-piracy troops. You can tell where this is going, can't you? Zheng Yi Sao's pirates take Naozhou, chase the troops away, and establish their headquarters in the fortress. A fortress built for anti-pirate forces. It's now 1808, and the pirates hold the military initiative along the coast. Imperial powers send the commander-in-chief of Zhejiang province to restore the rule of law. In short order, rip the commander-in-chief. To fight the pirates, the government enlists the help of 30 private junks. 6 months later, the Confederation has destroyed 63 vessels, half the Guangdong Navy. The pirates plunder coastal villages, markets, and rice fields. It's all about food here. On board the ships, daily rations consist of bowls of rice. When they ransom a fisherman, salted fish goes on the menu. A ransacked village guarantees a rare feast of pigs and poultry, fresh produce and booze. But between attacks, you gotta do what you gotta do. Certain species of rats are allowed to reproduce on board so that they can end up on the grill. Richard Glasspool, again a British captive, tells of a particularly dire 3-week stretch when meals consisted only of rice and caterpillars. Establishing a supply network on coastal villages provides so many benefits, like fences to buy and sell their loot. Also, to successfully avoid government forces, the pirates need a constant stream of information. They build alliances with local bandits and the Tongs, which are secret societies somewhere between Freemasonry and the Italian Mafia. Now that they rule the coast, the pirates move to control the interior. By 1809, every single village in the Pearl River Delta pays protection fees, in either money or rice, for fear of utter destruction. The Confederation has effectively replaced the government. Clearly, they now play the role of tax officers and maritime authorities, but their influence is much greater. Appointed officials who prove unable to get rid of the Confederation are fired left, right, and center. In 6 years, 3 military commanders-in-chief of the Guangdong province get dismissed. 5 regional governors come and go. The pirates have become an actual political force on a national scale. The emperor is not amused. He fires his own superintendent of customs for his failure to handle the pirate problem. On a morning in August 1809, the citizens of Guangzhou wake up to a hair-raising sight. Glued to walls everywhere, notices warn the population that Pao intends to raid the city.
Hey, if you've watched the last couple Tours Cabinet episodes, you'll know what's happening to me. Thimble, as you know, has kidnapped me and has been moving me around between various locations in her giant dollhouse. I am in her washing machine, back where I was when she first kidnapped me, and she will only release me if I make $10,000. That's $10,000 from the store within the next week. She's given me an extension the last 2 times, but it's getting worse. It's looking like I won't reach the goal. So this is apparently the last straw. 3 strikes and I'm out, and I don't want to know what happens when I'm out. So please go to tourscabinet.com/STOR. I'm going to have the editor put a QR code on the screen as well. You can click that. You can get cool stuff like the shirt that I'm wearing right now. You can get ones that don't have the YouTube logo as well. You can get like mouse pads. You can get mugs with a bunch of different designs. It's fun. There's cool stuff. Put Siegfried the Slug stickers around your town. Just help me get out of here so that I can make more episodes. Thanks.
Enough is enough. In a wildly unusual and humiliating move, the government resorts to asking for help from the despised barbarians, the Brits and the Portuguese. Westerners have been offering assistance for nearly a decade now, not out of the goodness of their own hearts. They're tired of watching their own ships getting hijacked and their citizens held hostage. Western prisoners have published the narratives of their ordeals. It's not nice. Pirates are costing Western empires a fortune and making them look silly. So, here come the Westerners, who seem to have thought that they were dealing with Jack Sparrow and his merry men. Western forces turn out outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned, and not a little ridiculous. Check this. The pirates capture the Portuguese brig belonging to the governor of Timor. They drive 5 American schooners to shore, and they blockade a Siamese mission at the mouth of the Pearl River. All this in 1 day. But then, the tide begins to turn. The naval leaders of Fujian and Zhejiang discover where Pao's right-hand man has docked. They attack the port, sink the ship, and kill its captain. Later in 1809, 6 Portuguese men of war, the ships, not the jellyfish-like creatures, corral the Red Fleet at the Battle of the Tiger's Mouth. They inflict the Red Fleet's first notable defeat. The Confederation feels the winds of change. Dissensions start to appear. However, they're still powerful enough that, for the government, the only swift resolution of the pirate problem is through mass amnesty. State strategy shifts from extermination to pacification. The government extends a negotiating hand. On February 21st, 1810, the sea turns crimson. 260 junks, flying the flag of the Red Squadron, armed with 1,200 pieces of ordnance and 14,000 men, enter the Pearl River and anchor near Chunpi. Ceremonies mark the opening of a round of talks. The pirates demand to retain a fleet of 80 junks and 5,000 men. That is unacceptable. Authorities want all boats handed over to them. Something that doesn't help the negotiations is that Pao, from atop his 24 years of age, wants to become the next emperor. Of China, yes. Clearly used to rolling natural 20s by now, Pao expresses his ambitions in a letter to a commander of the Portuguese forces, 5 days into the peace talks. Pao tries to play the Portuguese against the imperial authorities. He promises them entire provinces in exchange for their supporting his bid for the throne. The Portuguese turn him down. Negotiations come to a standstill. Negotiations come to a standstill, and they stay there for several weeks. Once more, Zheng Yi Sao saves the day. On April 8th, she gathers a party of pirate wives and children. They march to the Yamen, the official buildings of the Governor-General in Guangzhou. They bear no weapons. They request an audience. Once again, Zheng Yi Sao proves a cunning and tough negotiator. She knows that time is on her side. The authorities badly need a peace agreement because what's the alternative? That the pirates go back to pirating. So she stands her ground until her demands are finally approved. This is what she gets. Sailors will be authorized to join the army as soldiers. Captains will receive large sums of money officially to help them establish their men on land. Pao will keep 20 junks. He, along with other pirate leaders, will be given positions in the military and civil service. Pao becomes a lieutenant in the Minnan regiment. Against all odds, without so much as a weapon drawn, Zheng Yi Sao has saved the heads of every last one of her 60,000 men and secured their future. Thanks to his wife and also mother's political genius, Pao starts a second career. Ensues a meteoric rise through the ranks. Only 7 months after joining the Navy, he gets promoted to lieutenant colonel. Later, he becomes a full colonel. He commands the 2 battalions that protect Taiwan from a new generation of pirates. Zheng Yi Sao embraces respectability. She obtains the honorific title of Ming Sao, wife of an official, despite the fact that bestowing this title on a remarried widow was illegal. In 1813, she gives birth to a son. Sometime later, a daughter follows. Then, in 1822, Pao dies. Zheng Yi Sao moves her family to Macau. There, according to a contemporary source, she leads, quote, a peaceful life, so far as is consistent with the keeping of an infamous gambling house. And she gets involved in the salt trade. No details on that activity have reached us, although we can surmise it wasn't entirely on the up and up. In 1844, Zheng Yi Sao passes away at the age of 69. Her career as one of the most formidable pirate women to have ever sailed the 7 seas lasted under 10 years, but Zheng Yi Sao's legacy goes on. As a heavily fictionalized character, she's featured in a short story by Argentinian genius writer Jorge Luis Borges, as well as several films and series. She is Mistress Ching in Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. By her side fights a character inspired by Pao, played by Hong Kong martial arts legend Chow Yun-fat. Zheng Yi Sao appears in a Doctor Who episode, in the 2nd season of Our Flag Means Death, and through the voice of Lucy Liu in the VR game The Pirate Queen. In 2024, Zheng Yi Sao is the main character in a musical. The play, performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, bears the creative title of Asian Pirate Musical. In the own words of its Facebook page, the show features, quote, queer time-traveling pirates, and if that's not the best pitch you've heard this week, there's a cast album available. But wait, there's more. In 2025, Malaysian tech player Future Studios and Singapore's AI animation studio FizzDragon unite their fleets and, with financial support from China, release the feature film Pirate Queen, Zheng Yi Sao. Who plays the main character? Nobody. That's the beauty of it. This may well be the first mainstream movie entirely made with AI. They certainly want us to know it. It's terrible even by AI standards, to the point that even other AI creators are calling it slop. Zheng Yi Sao deserves far better. Perhaps there's more piracy in this movie than meets the eye. Yes, on the one hand, given all the debates about fair use for AI training, it's an inspired choice to make an AI-generated movie about pirates. There's that kind of piracy, but that's not what I meant. There are rumors that the very existence of this movie is a money laundering scheme, possibly for the Chinese government. Yet, there is still room for dreamers, for people who enjoy pirate stories of schooners, islands, and maroons, and buccaneers, and buried gold. Buried gold, you say? Remember the pirates' code of conduct? 20% of the spoils went to the crew. The rest was kept in a common fund. For sure, a large part of that fund was used to maintain the ships, feed the men, and purchase ammunition, but they must have put some aside, in case they got caught. It would only make sense. On the islands around Hong Kong, no less than 7 caves bear the name of Zheng Sao Tsai. They've been searched, of course. So far, no treasure has been found. So far.